let's do this. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome one and all to Build. How are we all feeling today? We doing all right? We feeling okay? Doing well? Friday. We made it. This is it. It's weekend time. Well, almost. But what better way to kick off the weekend, right? This is pretty exciting. We got a lot of awesome guests today, but this first one coming out of the gate hot, my friends, in just a few short minutes. Here to talk to us about I Like Me Better. The great Lauv is in the house. Make some noise for Lauv, please. Please. It's going to be a good one. He'll be out here in a moment. And joining him on stage, if you've never seen the show before, it's my job to walk you through how this works. So he comes on out, he sits down, right? And then joining him in this chair, we have a fantastic host and moderator from our friends and family over at Yahoo. Lindsay Parker's back. I love Lindsay. I think we should make some noise for Lindsay. Let's make a little bit of noise for Lindsay. Just make a little bit. Perfect. You guys are crushing this. So anyway, they come on out, they sit down, they talk for a little bit. After they talk, we turn it over to you guys for audience Q&A. So think of some great questions. We'll get you a microphone. You don't got to raise your hand or anything like that. We'll come on by. We'll find you. Those tuning in live, you could ask questions too. That's what the internet's all about. So go ahead and think of something and tweet at us at Build Series NYC, whatever it is you'd like to ask. If you do a really, really good job, we just might ask it live. And if you don't, we'll probably ignore it. So don't worry. It's very low risk. Very high reward, though, so give it a shot, right? Think of something and send it on over. If you don't have Twitter, but you do have a question, press the button on our site. It says submit a question. Anybody can press it. So go ahead. Go nuts. Think of something. Send it this way. Luke, how you doing, man? Thumbs up. All right, that's an early thumbs up because now I'm going to ask you, do we have a video? There it is. That's the official Luke thumbs up. We got a video, guys. We're going to watch that together as a group, and then we'll get Lauv out here and we'll do this thing. But before we go any further, there's one final question that I love to ask because our guests can hear you. So one more time, let's let them know. It's his Friday, too, guys. You excited that Lauv's in the house? Let them know. Let them go ahead. Make some noise. Just let them know. Just let them know. Seriously, you guys nailed it. That was beautiful. Thank you for that. Luke, do me a favor, man. Go ahead and run that video.
All I know is we could go anywhere, we could do anything, go whatever the mood we're in. Yeah, all I know is getting lost late at night under stars, finding love standing right where we are. Your lips, they pull me in the moment, you and I alone, and people may be watching. I don't mind, 'cause anywhere with you feels right. Anywhere with you feels like Paris in the rain, Paris in the rain. We don't need a fancy town or bottles that we can't pronounce, 'cause anywhere, babe, it's like Paris in the rain. When I'm with you, ooh, ooh, ooh. When I'm with you, ooh, ooh, ooh. Paris in the rain, Paris in the rain. I look at you now and I want this forever. I might not deserve it, but there's nothing better. Don't know how I ever did it all without you. My heart is about to jump out of my chest. Feelings, they come and they go, that they do. Feelings, they come and they go, not with you. Late nights and street lights and people look at me, girl, the whole world could stop. Anywhere with you feels right. Anywhere with you feels like Paris in the rain, Paris in the rain. We don't need a fancy town or bars that we can't pronounce, 'cause anywhere, babe, it's like Paris in the rain. When I'm with you, ooh, ooh, ooh. When I'm with you, ooh, ooh, ooh. Paris in the rain, Paris in the rain. So come and take the moonlight, underneath the moonlight. I hit you with my eyes. Wonder whether it's all gods. Isn't it obvious? Isn't it cool? It's a moonlight underneath the moonlight. Anywhere with you feels right. Anywhere with you feels like Paris in the rain. Paris in the rain. Walking down an empty street. Puddles underneath our feet.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsay Parker from Yahoo Music. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Was it awkward to sit here and watch your video in front of an audience?
First of all, thank you for having me.
Of
And
course.
second of all, yeah, I was just gonna say that was a fun experience.
It was cool. I was
Who is
watching
that
everybody.
guy?
Everybody was so into it. I'm a big music video geek, and I was watching that. And unless that was the magic of editing, was that all done in one take?
One take.
How many times did you have to do it to get it right?
So we actually only got like a handful of takes, and that was the very last take. It was like after that we were like, well, if we didn't get it, the sun's going down, and we're screwed. So
Are there any blooper reels? Did you make any mistakes along the way?
there was definitely like times where the keys got caught up and stuff like that, or like, oh, actually one of the good ones is like my jacket. When I tried to take it out of the back of the car, it got like stuck on like the lock thing. And it's like super awkward, and I had to just like abort and try to make it look smooth. Didn't work.
Maybe for like some DVD of outtakes someday.
Yeah.
So that song obviously mentions Paris, but another city, which we happen to be in right now, that figures so prominently thematically in your work is New York City.
Yeah.
In your songs, your Spotify playlist. So obviously it's a great jumping off point to, like, what does New York mean to you? Why is it so important to you? I know it was part of a really important period in your life.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's really crazy and cool to be here because, I went to NYU. So it's always awesome coming back. Yeah, like New York has been like, I think the biggest thing about it for me is, I moved around a lot growing up, and I would always be like the dude who wasn't from the small town that I was living in, I would always be like kind of transplanted there. And then when I got to New York, it was kind of like this comfort, and everybody, or not everybody, there are like a ton of, native New Yorkers, but there's a lot of people who are from everywhere, all just trying to, do their thing and make their lives.
So how did that time at, you have a Spotify playlist that is called...
I Met You When I Was 18.
Met You When I Was 18, that obviously is about that time when you were in New York and at NYU. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience and how it changed your life and affected your music?
Yeah. I mean, I was honestly kind of afraid to come here. Like, I was really intimidated by the city, and I almost didn't, like, visit NYU. So I could have not ended up here. But, the whole thing for me was, like, I Like Me Better is the beginning of the playlist. It's about falling in love for the first time out of nowhere when I was kind of in a place where I was 18. I didn't really know exactly, who I wanted to be. I thought, maybe I'd be a songwriter and producer for other artists, which is, something I'm still doing. And, those 4 years, beyond just the whole thing was, a relationship that I was in, but it was also like a big like self-discovery and, self-definition process for me, being in New York and figuring it all out.
So then how does the playlist progress from there with your story?
So the playlist right now is still open-ended where like I'm going to be adding more and more songs, kind of like filling it in like a puzzle. Because basically, it's every song I've ever put out so far. And I kind of have put them out of order up until now. And then I finally ordered them. And, Paris and Rain was like the most recent one to come out. And from there, it's kind of like, this whole process has been me kind of piecing my own story together and like figuring, kind of like processing everything that I went through.
Well, I was reading your bio when I was doing research for this interview, and you described yourself as a hopeless romantic. It said self-described hopeless romantic. Can you please explain? I mean, obviously it's your bio, so you must agree with it, but can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. I guess like, for example, one of the things that inspired Paris and Rain was one of my favorite movies, Midnight in Paris, La La Land, stuff like that. Like I don't know, kind of growing up, I've always had like a massive soft spot for that. And like all my favorite music has been very like longing or heartbreak or, something like that. I started, the very first song I wrote when I was like 13 was a breakup song, and I'd never been in a relationship. It's just like always been something that for some reason I've kind of gravitated towards. And I think for the longest time I kind of shied away from it. And I was like, I like wanted to be cool and was like, no, because it's like, a lot of people think that's not like masculine or whatever, And then I was kind of like, no, this is who I am. So.
So you wrote it. Tell me about this song at age 13. It actually was on my list of questions because I know you've been doing music for so long. What was the first song you ever wrote? So tell me a little bit more about this breakup song about an imaginary.
Yeah, I don't know. Like there, I feel like there would be like a couple lines that made sense, and then the rest of it was just like whatever random stuff was on my mind. Yeah.
So long before you were at NYU, even before you were 13, I mean, when did you start doing music? Something like 4 years old or something?
Yeah, I
what
started
are your
playing
earliest
piano.
memories?
Yeah, it was me at a piano, being like, I'm a little kid and I don't really want to play piano, so I kind of wish I stuck with it from a young age. And then from there, I picked up the viola because my 2 older sisters, shout out Iva and Maya, my older sisters, they played violin and cello, so then I started playing viola. But really, like, once I picked up guitar, and I started writing my first songs at like 13. That was when I like really fell in love with music and like using it as a way to just express myself more so.
Did your parents know from an early age when you were 4 or 5 years old that you had that thing, that this was your path? Or did you know? When did you know it was your path?
I think there was really never like one specific point, but it basically, once I started writing songs and at the time I was also skateboarding, and I was like, okay, like I'm not going to become a professional skateboarder. And all I was doing was writing songs, in middle school and high school. So it was kind of like, this is the only thing I could ever do. Yeah.
So so it was piano,
Yeah.
viola, guitar, but at some point, computers and keyboards and all that stuff.
And I launched my own pasta sauce company too.
You're a jack of all trades. You have your own perfume, your own cologne.
Yeah. Oh, we should do that.
We should.
A collab.
It would have this logo on the bottle. And actually,
I love it.
And as a flower, look, it'd be perfect.
Let's go.
But when did you sort of make the transition to composing or working with, electronic instruments as well?
That was really just like me being a nerd in middle school and high school and just like messing with my laptop. Yeah, it was kind of like my version of being a singer-songwriter, I guess, was like, it wasn't just playing guitar. I was like, oh, I can, make this weird synth sound or do whatever. So yeah, it's just been a very experimental process.
And then I'm sure a lot of people here do know the story, but it is a pretty fascinating story. You kind of went viral. To me, you're actually the model of how people become successful now. It used to be this old school model that it was dependent, obviously, on radio play and gatekeepers like MTV, and but you pretty much had the more new school model of it being very organic and being via blogs and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about how when things really blew up for you?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting process for me because it's like growing up, when I would play in bands, I would think so much about, like how I could try so hard to push my music. And then, once I put out my first song as Lauv, it was really just about putting it online. And then like, I guess, people connected with it and, blogs started posting it, which is really cool, and like Hype Machine, that whole thing. But really like, I had a very interesting situation where 2 years after I put out my first song, The Other, it started to like all of a sudden bubble up on Spotify. Like it got added to one playlist. And I remember I was on tour and I was like, I didn't even really understand the whole playlisting thing. One of my friends congratulated me and I was like, cool. And then next thing I know, another playlist and then another one. And then I ended up, I think, being like the only independent artist that was like on their Today's Top Hits playlist for a moment with that song. And it was like 2 years after it came out. So yeah, I think music.
You have no idea like what made it show up in the algorithm?
I think like somebody probably at Spotify took a chance. They heard the song and they were like, I like it. Let's see if our listeners like it. And, I guess people did. I just think music's in a really cool place where like, if you're doing something that you feel is like, genuine and you're being honest and you put that out there and people connect to it, like, they'll find it. They'll tell their friends, like memes, like the internet is crazy. Like people make things popular that they love,
See, it's an interesting point of view because there are some artists that are very anti-streaming or at least have mixed feelings about it. There are some artists that even refuse to put their albums out on Spotify or whatever. You must be, what are your stance on it? I feel like you obviously must be very for it because it's...
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, like I just want it to be as accessible to people as, as possible. And that's like honestly the way that I listen to music is, Spotify and streaming, so. How
many streams do you have now?
I don't know. It's crazy.
Last time I read it was 250 million in under a year. That's crazy.
I don't even know like what that number is. Like, how do you?
How many zeros?
That? It's so crazy.
Does that must trip you out? I mean, you're still so young and
yeah. And one of like the craziest experiences I had recently is like some of my biggest markets on Spotify are like cities all across Asia, and I got a chance to go on tour with Ed Sheeran in Asia and play in arenas, which was like a really scary, crazy, amazing experience. And right before we did the arena shows, I got to do some of my own mall shows in Manila. And that was really crazy because like those were my shows. I had no idea if people were going to show up. I was like, am I about to play to an empty mall? And like we packed out the place, and it's just like, that's when it makes it really like that much more real, right? Because you see the numbers online, and like you can, as a human, only grasp that so much, you know. And it's all about like actually showing up. Like the fact that I had no idea people were going to show up here today, like that's what's like really real. Or like, you know, we're about to sell out like all my shows on my headline tour that starts in January. Like it's a world tour, like it's crazy. So
that's
I'm thankful.
amazing. Well, congratulations on all that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Is there footage on YouTube of these mall shows? I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, and I put a little clip on my Instagram as well.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, going back to the streaming debate or whatever, for people who do have their misgivings about it or want to figure out how they can use it to their advantage, you know, because there are debates about how people get paid and stuff. Like, what's your advice to artists about how it can work for them? This basically a relatively new model for the music business.
In terms of like just how to put your music
what
out
are the
there?
pros? Yeah, how to get the music out there and
yeah, I mean, there's like I have a completely independent team that's like very handcrafted of people that I love, and there's ways that anybody can put their music on Spotify, SoundCloud, everywhere. It's totally accessible to anybody, and it's especially cool because you can do that and you can own your rights, and you can be totally free. So I think that's really cool.
Did you get any career advice from Ed Sheeran? He's had a pretty cool, steady climb career, and he, like you, writes for other people as well.
Yeah, there's really a lot of like what I learned on that tour was just like him and just like the embodiment of him, like watching him on stage, watching the way he is just so genuinely who he is, and he doesn't care. And there's so much like, I don't know, there's so much pressure in this world right now, I feel like, for people to curate themselves so much and try so hard to be something and present their best pictures on Instagram. And like, that doesn't bring any happiness, at least not for me. And like what I observed in Ed on stage, like hanging out with him, the way he treats everybody in his team is just like human, very, very human and very just real. So it's very inspiring.
Very cool. So speaking of writing for other people, you've written some pretty high-profile songs for Cheat Codes and Demi Lovato and Charlie XCX. I love that Boys song, by the way.
Thank you.
I love the video.
That was that was a fun one.
Yeah. How did that come about? And I guess another question, a follow-up question to that is, what do you get out of writing for other people that you don't when you're writing for yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting. Every song starts differently. My favorite way to write is to not really think about what a song is going to be for and just to like sit down and write a song and see what happens. But what I find is like all of my songs, I end up being a lot more like the lyrics have to be about my life. Like, they're all very real and I'm very like particular about that. But, when I do a song, when I'm working with my friends and doing something like No Promises or Boys or any song that I'm writing with another artist or for another artist, I just try to like take what I've experienced, but be a little bit, looser with it. And, somebody else in the room could be like, oh yeah, I kind of been through that, but it was like this. And I was like, oh, I think that would be really cool, So. Has
there ever been a time where you started writing a song that you thought was probably going to be for someone else, and you're like, oh no, I'm going to take this one for myself?
Yeah. Yes, that's definitely happened.
Are there examples of songs?
Nothing out yet, but there will probably definitely in my future be songs like that. Yeah, that's a very fun experience.
So who would be your dream collaborator or dream person to write for that you haven't yet?
I'm trying to work with Chris Martin from Coldplay. Yeah.
Is that actually being discussed? Is that
I'm discussing it with the universe. Please.
Chris Martin.
If any of you guys know him, please.
I could see.
I saw him in a sushi restaurant in L.A. once.
That's a very L.A. thing to say.
And it was actually him sitting across from Beck. So there was
very
crazy.
L.A. thing to say.
Yeah.
But you didn't approach him and be like, hey.
No, I wanted to let them just, do their thing.
Very cool. Well, maybe he's watching this, Chris Martin.
If you're watching.
What is it about wanting to work with him?
I just think like I said, a lot of my favorite music is very like longing, heartbreak. And I just feel like he does that like the best, or he's one of the best at melodically, lyrically at doing stuff like that. Yeah.
Going back to your childhood when you were getting into music and composing and writing music, what were you listening to back then? Coldplay, John Mayer. I went through a huge like emo phase. One of my favorite bands was called Taking Back Sunday. I liked a lot of like hardcore music too. Really everything, because I moved around so much, like I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and I got like, I think my first CD was like the Eminem Show. And I also, for one of my birthdays, I think my mom gave me like a Missy Elliott CD. So let's go. Good mom.
Yeah, or somebody did. Maybe it was my sister. I don't know.
Good sister.
But yeah, my music taste has always been like super eclectic, like some jazz as well. Yeah.
What was the first concert you ever went to?
I actually don't remember my first concert. I think it was a My Chemical Romance concert, though. That's the first one I remember.
I love My Chemical Romance.
Yeah.
That would ruin you for all their concerts. That's a good one. What was the first concert you ever played? Like, can you tell me about your first gig? How old were you? Where was it?
Oh, like my very first show ever as like a person. Yeah, the first one that I remember was like I was living in Pennsylvania, and it was like in the random fire hall in the middle of nowhere. Like I was like so excited too because it was with an artist called The Ready Set, who was like especially like during like the MySpace days, was like huge inspiration for me. And I remember like I thought it was gonna be like this crazy big show, and we all show up to this fire hall, and there like wasn't even the sound guy, and like I brought like this like really old PA system, and it was like super jank, and there was like 10 people, but it was like a huge moment because I was really excited to be opening for him.
Were those 10 people into it?
I don't remember.
I
don't know.
I'm sure.
Hopefully.
It's interesting, now it makes total sense that you have this background of liking like the emo music.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have necessarily thought that from what your music sounds like, but lyrically it does make sense. Like,
Yeah.
What are your memories of that time? It was a time when, like you were saying, it was okay for rock men to be sensitive.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like loved all that music and the whole like MySpace era. Like it was, I think there's some similarities, to what's happening now in music where people are just putting stuff online and like, totally just being creative, putting interesting visuals out there. Like I remember like building, me and my best friend growing up, like he would help me build my whole MySpace layout, and it was like a whole thing, So it's just a very creative time.
What bands did you have in your, was it top 8 or top 7 friends?
Ooh, I think it was top 8.
Top 8.
I feel like I had mostly like my friends. Actual friends, yeah. What about you?
I think I had The Cure in my top friends.
Nice.
And NME Magazine.
Okay.
In my top friends. And then the rest were actual people I knew. But I think I did that because I wanted to look cool. It was very, the top friends thing was very important. It could get very political, like the order your friends were.
Oh, yeah. That was definitely
People
a thing.
could get mad if they saw they got bumped down to like number 3 or whatever. But it's interesting. You're right. That was sort of the seeds of what's going on now with your internet-driven career. And I think there's a lot of people from your generation, like that's how music got out there. So it's a good thing. Well, I want to make sure we have time. We have so many fans here who want to ask questions. So I'm going to open it up to who is the first. Here we go.
Hey, Ari, I just want to say congrats on everything for the
Thank
past
you.
couple of years. And as a music student at NYU, it's been very inspiring to watch everything you've been doing. Emily Warren and you are my favorite songwriters right now. I was just curious if you could talk more about the writing process for Boys.
Yeah. So that was actually an interesting one where, the song was actually like, I worked on it with some of my friends in LA, and then it was kind of like a few different songwriters in different places. I think she might have been in London at the time when she worked on it with Cass Lowe. So that was definitely one of those songs where it was like, we were all kind of bouncing ideas back and forth through the internet and trying to figure out, how to make the song, the best it could be. Yeah.
Thanks.
But yeah, Emily's awesome. I think I might see her tomorrow. She's a good friend.
Next question. Where am I? Oh, here we go. Sorry.
Hi.
Hey.
So, if you had to give one piece of advice to someone starting out with music in New York, what would it be?
So I don't like telling people how to like do their thing, but I think the most important thing for me was just it's actually quite simple but quite complicated at the same time. Is just like to make the decision that if it's like what you're happiest doing, it's what you want to do, and it's like what you need to do in your life. Like somebody once told me that they were like, you should be a songwriter if like you wake up every day and you need to be a songwriter. And I was like, oh, cool. And I was a little intimidated by that at the time. But you just have to make the decision that like no matter how many times you fail, people say no to you, or like you look awkward, or you do something that you second guess or whatever, because everybody goes through that you're never going to let that be the thing that stops you. Because if you make the decision that you're never going to stop, like you're the only person that can like is responsible for whether you become successful or not. Time can take its time, and you never know how long it'll take. But I think in all things it's like that, right? So,
Thank you, and congratulations.
thank you.
We have time for one more question. Over here. Thank you.
How you doing? My question was, what was your favorite venue to play at or favorite moment?
Ooh, favorite venue to play. That is really tough. I think recently I just played a radio show in Milwaukee that was like insane. It was with Khalid and Jesse Reyes, and I was like the first artist, and I was expecting it to be like empty, but it was like all 4,000 people were packed into the room. Like nobody could move. It was just super sweaty, amazing energy. It was like that also last time I played at Webster Hall. I'm pretty sure, which I'm so sad that it's like closed, right? Hopefully not forever. I'm pretty sure they must have let in more people than were legally supposed to be allowed there. So it was great.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a really fascinating conversation. Congratulations on all your success. Good
Thank you
luck
so
with
much.
the Chris Martin thing, the perfume thing, all your future endeavors.
I'll get some emails about that.
Yes, well, hopefully someone will send him that and we'll get it going.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. It was really fun, and thank you everybody for coming.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thank you.